So before I sent these McAllisters back to AE for recrafting, I decided to patina them. So I stripped them down, and this is what the nose looked like after they'd been stripped and sanded smooth. It was in pretty good shape. I shot some dark brown dye on the nose, turned out pretty good, and threw a couple layers of mirror gloss in. That was the result. So these shoes were in good condition before they went back to AE for recrafting. Then they came back from out Edmonds. They had a nick in the leather near the welt. They had glue drips on the heels and other places on the shoe. There were glue drips on the nose. There was edge dressing everywhere. These tufts of white fibers were everywhere. There's a gouged welt, another picture of the welt joint not uh, joined properly. Edge dressing on the upper all over the place, and then what looked like glue and edge dressing put on the upper, on the nose of the shoe, on the toe of the shoe purposefully. Obviously, it looks nothing like the way I sent them off. I didn't expect it to, but I didn't expect it to come back with this much dye damage all over it. You can see there the edge dressing well into the upper, more glue all over the toe of the shoe, and fuzz on the stuck to the glue. Edge dye up on the upper there, again right above the welt, about a quarter inch, 3/8 of an inch high. Really bad shape. So I stripped them all down once again, and when I stripped them down, I found more damage. There's a stain underneath the toe of the shoe that was not in the first image you saw in this video, and dye all over the edge dye all over the toes that had to be sanded and stripped off. It was on there really bad. That edge dye is just something, just a mess. Yeah. So here it is after they were stripped of acetone and partially sanded. Obviously, there's more sanding to do on the nose in this photo, which I did later before the video sequence you're going to see of me airbrushing them. But I didn't expect it to come back from Allen Evans like this. They did do a good job on the V-tread sole. The channel for the stitching is not very deep, but I didn't expect it to be. The sole is glued to the midsole pretty well, so I'm not worried about wearing through the stitching and it coming apart. I like the V-tread sole better than the other soles, so that turned out well, but the uppers were a mess.
Some new AE soles there, but they completely screwed up the upper, which I have stripped. And there is a stain on the toe that was not there before. It looks like it's something under the rogue cap there, maybe glue or something. They peeled that back when they resoled it. Anyway, they really screwed up the uppers on this job. But I mean, you can get a pretty good look there at 13-year-old, or whatever these shoes are now, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, I've lost track. It's in the teens of what Walnut looked like back then. There's so much variation in Walnut now, but I will equalize the Walnut here after I get these toes all completely cleaned up. So the colors I'm going to be using to fix these shoes, I need to equalize the walnut color first, and then come back and do the patina with darker colors. The colors I'm going to be using are Saphir's light brown, not to be confused with fawn. You can see here, see if I can do an example here, even on the label, that light brown is better than the fawn. The fawn is an orangier color than the walnut that's in the Allen Edmonds. Most of there's quite a variety of colors, it seems, in Allen Edmonds walnut offerings across various models. But for the most part, the Saphir light brown is a better match to walnut than most of her colors. So I have some other colors here. I have, in addition to fawn and light brown, I have Saphir's basic brown, their Havana brown, and their dark brown. What I'm going to be using today is a combination of dark brown and light brown and black to do these shoes. That'll about do it. I won't need the other colors. I've considered using the a Havana brown or brown to add some variation to color, but probably what I'm more likely to do if I want to do that, I'm just going to feel my way through it as I spray. But what I'm more likely to do if I do this is to take the light brown itself and then add a little bit of a dark brown to it to darken it up a little bit, and that's going to keep it the color palette the same, rather than adding other colors. Like you can see how orange this fawn is. Fawn's actually a really pretty color, but it's oranger than what I'm looking for here. And Havana brown it's more of a cigar color, there's a greenish hue to it. And your basic brown is just your basic brown. I mean, it's a very, very medium brown, of which these shoes do not have a whole lot of. There's a golden hue to these shoes that comes from the wee bit of yellow that is in the light brown here. You can see a little bit of it on the label there. Not nearly as orangey, though, as fawn is. Anyway, that's my plan, and as dyeing goes, you know, you start dyeing your shoe, and you kind of go by eye. What does it look like? Am I getting the results I want? How is this going to look in the end? Am I achieving the results? And then you adjust accordingly, because sometimes things don't go as the way you planned. I'm going to be using my Walnut Neo for this job. This is the gun that I prefer to use for this kind of job. If I were going to go back and do all these little broken holes, I would probably use my Pasha for that, and I may do another video on that. But just for correcting the color on this shoe, trying to get the area that's been stripped and sanded back to matching the stained color that the factory put on the shoe, this is the tool I prefer for this job. It'll do just fine here, and these areas that have been sanded will absorb the stain pretty well. But if I was going to go over and do all the broguing, you know, darken that area, I'll switch to my Pasha that has a bit more variability and a finer. I can shoot each individual hole if I want to, and not worry about a wider spray pattern. But it's got a good feel in the hand, and I like it reminds me of guns I used to paint cars with. The way it feels in the hand, just a much smaller version of like a Sada Mini Jet. And it gives me, I like the fine control, being able to, you know, push on the color cup and back and forth, and trigger it with my middle finger rather than my index finger. Though there's nothing wrong with that if you choose to do that. It's just more comfortable for me to spray it this way than this way, like it's a pistol. It's a good gun. I have no complaints about it. They made a good product. The Walnut Neo TRN2. All right, I apologize in advance. I am not a professional videographer, and I'm just kind of making do here. For those of you who've never run an airbrush before, a couple of explanations. The trigger controls the airflow, and you can push back for a little bit of air and no paint. And if I go all the way back, I will get the paint, which mixes, in this case it's dye, a Saphir dye, that mixes internally right here at the mix head right before it comes out of the gun. And the flow control back here allows me to adjust how much I'm getting out, but the width of the spray is determined by the needle and the head itself. So the needle and the head are interchangeable with other sizes. I just have the medium head on here right now, and I have it set about halfway, trigger to go halfway, the stop to let the trigger go about halfway back. I get air at the outset. Here, I'm going to show you an example here. I get air by pulling the trigger. Can you see that? Yeah, a little bit, and then I pull the trigger more, and I get dye. All right, so that's how that's going to go, and you kind of feel that. This is how I hold this gun, like this, my thumb across the top. I hold my Pasha gun completely differently than this. My finger against the side of the cup here that's holding the dye, and my middle finger on the trigger. That's what gives me the most control. That's how I like to hold it. This is a completely personal preference and individualistic thing. So here we go. We're going to start shooting some dye on the shoe. Hopefully I can get this in frame and you can see it. Very light. You can hardly even see it going on the shoe. Very light. I'm a little bit heavier now. I'm going to cover more. I want it to go on light because you can't take it off, but you can put more on. Okay, that's the whole end of the shoe. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna touch up the entire rest of the shoe and try to even out some of this color. Other places here that I've sanded or I've rubbed real hard with acetone or whatever, I'm gonna get some color on there. Most of the shoe's in pretty good shape. Doesn't need a lot of color. But some of these areas, I think there was one of these shoes, I don't remember, is this one? Or is it this one? Yeah, this one has a big drip of glue back there and had a massive drip of glue up front. I don't know what they were doing at AE when they did that. A little bit more up here. Yeah, this color, this light brown, sapphire light brown, is a good match for walnut. I'm gonna let it sit for a minute while I do this one. That's where that cut was in the shoe. What I'm doing here is I trimmed that cut piece of the upper that whoever resold this was careless with. I trimmed it, sanded it. I'm gonna dye it, and then I have some filler that I'm gonna fill it with before I go to a darker dye. I'm gonna patina dark brown around the edges here, but I wanna equalize this color first with this sapphire light brown. What you don't want to do when you're dyeing shoes, even particularly with the airbrush, and this is much harder to control with a swab or a brush, but what you don't want to do is try to get the shoe to look the way you want the shoe to look when you're wearing it. If you go that dark, you're going to go way too dark, and by the time you put conditioner and polish and wax on top of all that, you're going to get a shoe that's 5 times darker than you want it to be. So what I want is to equalize the color here, and then I'm going to go over and give it a light patina in certain areas, and I'm going to expect that when I put Bic 4 on it, and then when I put MDO cream polish on it, and then finally follow it with the tips and the toes and the heels with wax, that's going to give that rich luster, vibrance, and depth to the color that I'm looking for. I'm not trying to achieve that rich color and depth with the dye from the airbrush. That just doesn't work. All right, so what I'm doing now is I put the first coat of dye on these. I'm gonna stick these in front of the space heater. I got it on 84 degrees, up pretty close. It's I'm gonna heat set that dye a little bit, and then we'll come back and check and see with a brush how well it took and whether it needs more. All right, these are set in front of the heater for about 10 minutes. Gonna brush them down and see what we got here. The dye is dry. You can see how the new dye we just put on compares to the factory color and how close we're getting to it. All right, that's not too bad. It needs another coat, but it's getting pretty close. Okay, much more equal. The shoes are hot right now. The pores in the leather are open. It will take the dye on this next coat a little bit better than it took the last coat when the shoes were cold. They're not flaming hot, but they have been sitting in front of a 84-degree space heater for 10 minutes. Okay, I like what I'm seeing. let's move on here. Yeah, you can see it's just sucking that dye right up. That warm leather likes that. Likes that color. This area where they cut that leather is really, really in rough shape. But you'll never notice it when it's done. I'm not worried about that at all. And that area where there was that glue drip is basically almost completely vanished. You would really have to be looking for it to know that it was there. That one little spot right there. Right there. Can you still see it? A little bit, just a little bit. And when we patina this heel, that's gonna vanish. Look, there's still some glue on there I missed. Unbelievable. This guy's got glue all over everything. I'm gonna take that off. Anyway. All right, that's 2 coats, heat set and brushed. And you can see the color is really, really close to the factory color. So if what I wanted to do was to make these look exactly like the factory color, I would switch away from the light brown right now, and I would switch to the medium brown. That is, where'd they go? This one right here. I'd switch to this one, and I'd put a light dusting of that medium brown, particularly over the toes, and that would, I guarantee you that would make it look just like the rest of the shoe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some patina here. So I'm actually going to switch to dark brown, and some of these things, that light spot right there, I'm going to shoot dark brown around the bottom edge and here, and some dark brown over the toes, and I'm going to highlight the broguing with the dark brown and the heel. And that is why I'm not switching to the medium brown right now. I'm putting a light dusting on that because I intend to put a patina on this. But if you wanted to return this to the factory, just like it came from the factory in terms of its evenness of color, that's what I would do right now, is a very little bit light dusting of light brown. But I'm happy with the way these look right now. This area is a little bit lighter than the rest of the shoe, but it's about to take the patina, and it's acceptable the way it is right now. You'll see what I mean here in a few minutes. All right, here we go with the dark brown. We're going to touch these up a little bit along the bottom edges, toes, and heels, and see how this goes. First, I'm doing real close to the welt. Trying to get that blend in there. Shoot a little bit on the back of the heel here. Don't want to go too dark. I can darken it up with cream polish later if I wish. That's about what I'm looking for, that amount of contrast. Much more contrast than that. Aim the shoe away from me so the angle of the spray is like this. My spray head's like this. It glances past and off the edge. It gives a nice smooth blend. Now I'm going to go and highlight some of the broguing too with this before I go and move on to the nose at the end. The way I'm holding the gun, the size of the nose and the amount of flow that I'm getting from the trigger, the distance from the shoe determines about how wide the die is when it's hitting the shoe. And the way I have everything set up and the way I'm doing it right now, it's a little less than 1/4 of an inch, about this distance from the shoe, which is about 2.5, 3 inches. If I come back to about here, about to 4 inches, I'm getting a little over 1/4 of an inch. So you can see me, as I want to go and spray a wider pattern, I'm pulling away from the shoe because the cone that's coming out of this widens the further you get away. All right, so now we're going to do the toe. I'm spraying up the toe, so as the dye sprays up the toe, it blends evenly. In this area here, I want the concentration of the dye down here and then it to blend up through the medallion. I don't want heavy darkness of the dark brown up on the top of the medallion. I want it just on the tip of the toe. Do here around the eyelets. Just a little bit there. All right, it's coming along. Another thing to keep in mind is that after you set it and set the dye with the heat and then come back with the brush, you will be removing some of the dye with the brush. The stuff that sits on the surface that doesn't get sucked into the hot leather. It will get brushed off the surface when you brush it, even after sitting in front of the heater. All right, we get that where that cut was. We're going to get in there and fill that with some darkness. I'm getting close because I have a very narrow area to shoot that dye in there. So I need the narrowest cone coming out of this gun, and then to blend it, I'll pull back to blend it. When I'm spraying, I'm not looking at my gun. I'm looking at where on the surface the dye is hitting the shoe. One of the tricks here for tinning these shoes is to get the two to look alike, right? You don't want a lot more darkness a lot further back on the toe of this shoe and less darkness further forward on this shoe. You kind of got to get them to look kind of alike. Each shoe is unique. However, it's a pair, and so you want to get that highlighting the same, as you know, reasonably the same on both shoes. You don't want big differences between where the dye is on the shoe. Do those look about alike? Yeah, they do. All right, I'm gonna heat set them and then brush them. All right, these have been heat set and brushed, and here's where we are with them. They're looking like I want them to. I really like the way this heel has turned out. A little darkness in there looks great. I still have there's a little bit of blotchiness here on the toe. Where they splashed all that edge dressing up on the toe. I don't know what they were thinking with that. But everywhere else it looks pretty good, and I'm not too terribly worried about this. I'm going to touch this up with just a little bit more here. Just a little bit more along the edges here with some of the dark brown. I don't want too much of this brown proceeding up into the nose, into the medallion, because I want to still see the medallion. I like the darkness around there's my compressors going off. Around the brogan and the eyelets. Kind of the highlighting I was looking for, not too dramatic. And it's kind of got a rich, medium brown walnut look to it. I think you can brush a shoe too much. I think it's possible. There where that cut was, almost completely hidden. I'm going to shoot a little bit more in there, a little bit more on the edge. I'm just going to touch this up just a little bit. Okay, I like that one. When we hit it with the Bic 4, it's really gonna look good. Okay, I like that. All right, one more heat set, one more brush, and we will move on to polish. All right, here we are after the final heat set and brush. Whoops, can't hold on to them very well, can I? Let's get this out of the way. That's what we're working with. I'm about to put some Bic number 4 on them. I watch some of these guys that do some of this stuff sometimes and watch them condition their stuff, and they're like talking gently, and there's classical music, and they're massaging, like they're making sweet love to their shoes. I don't really operate like that. So, shake this guy up, go around there, and it's just gonna get soaked into the shoe. It's really gonna absorb the driest areas, absorb the most. It's like you're using lotion on a shoe. And it gets put on there pretty liberally. You can watch the area that it soaks in the most, like that, needs a little bit more. I do not make sweet love to my shoes. They're freaking shoes, man. Right? And this takes a little color off. Not much at all though, just a wee little bit. I put it on liberally like this, let it soak in, kind of like you're putting lotion on your skin. Let it soak in and then wipe off the excess. It's down in the brogue holes there, nothing to worry about as far as that goes, that'll wipe off. I'm just gonna let it sit like that. You can see they really richened up when I did that. All right, and you're starting to get a look at the blending that occurred here. All that light spots disappeared. That blotchy lightness on the toes disappeared when I put the Bic 4 on them. It's a little bit more Bic 4. Put that on there too. Which is, what I expected, having worked with this before. So I'm getting the evenness that I expected, and of course it's good for the shoe. The shoes are turning out beautifully. This will continue to darken up. These areas will continue to darken up, particularly that gets multiple layers of mirror gloss and cream polish. I'm gonna use like 1 coat of real light cream polish over the entire shoe. I'm gonna put like 2 coats of mirror gloss neutral over the entire shoe, because I like to get a coat of wax on my shoes everywhere, just from the standpoint of repelling water, repelling stains, knowing full well that you can't build it up. Anywhere there's a flex point that if you build up the wax up too much, obviously the wax will pop, so you don't want to do that. But I like to put 1 or 2 coats of wax over the entire shoe just to give it a little stain and water repellency. Mostly what I'm going to focus on when it comes to building up a mirror shine is on the toes, a little bit in this area right there, I like it there, and on the heel, right in the back of the heel. Sometimes I'll try to build up a little here. I gotta tell you, I really like the way that looks there. The little darkening around the holes and the broguing with that highlight, that light spot. I think it looks freaking awesome. I don't know what you guys think, but that looks good. Everything is going according to plan so far. Rarely does everything go exactly according to plan, so there's still time for this to turn into a disaster. But right now, things are looking good. All right, so these shoes have sat overnight. The Bic 4 has a chance to absorb. The dye has had a chance to equalize, and you're getting a very good look at what the true color and representation of the dye is on these shoes at this point. They look basically exactly what I had hoped for them to look like. All the issues and defects that were created by the resoling process at Allen Edmonds have been corrected. They look arguably better than they looked from the factory, even after however many years I've had these, 13 to 16 years. The effect that I wanted on the toe, where the medallion is still visible, but there's a nice patina on the toe, that is made manifest here by the time for the Bic 4 to absorb and dry down. They have no wax on them whatsoever. They have no polish on them whatsoever. This is dye and conditioner only, and this is what they look like. Arguably, you could wear them right now, and they would look really good. They have nuance and depth and a richness to the color that they did not have before. They're beautiful shoes. In a lot of respects, I think you would be hard pressed to buy new shoes from the factory and have them look like this without the work that's been done to them. So in some respects, the damage that was done through the resoling process is kind of a blessing in disguise. Not only do I have new soles, but I have these beautiful uppers now that are exactly what I was looking for. Now what we'll see when I start putting mirror gloss on them is that this area where the mirror gloss goes darkens, particularly if I use brown mirror gloss rather than neutral. It will create the shine that I'm looking for on the toe. I may throw 10 coats down here and throw 5 coats up here, 2 coats in the rest of the shoe, 10 coats on the heel. Look at that heel. Look how good that heel looks burnished. Both of them are that way. I mean, these are beautiful shoes. I don't know what is not to like about the Edmonds McAllister. This is a beautiful shoe. I can say one thing that if I were to, there's one thing I would like to change about the shoe and how the company produces the shoe. I would like the welt and the sole to be wider here. I would like the welt fudged and edge ironed. I will probably do that to these soles. One of the things that you can see that is that you don't have with Allen Edmonds leather soles or their double oak soles is you don't have this tattered rubber edge. I'm wearing some Grant Stone diesels right now with a lug sole on them, and you can see in the lug sole where the sander leaves a tattered edge. I don't really like that very much. It can be fixed without too much trouble. The way I intend to fix this on these Allen Edmonds is I intend to hot wax the heel and the edge of the outsole, and I think in doing so that tattered edge, that hot iron will blend that in. That's something I'm looking forward to trying. But if that wasn't a concern for you, didn't care about that, these shoes are beautiful right now as they are. Throw a couple of coats of neutral wax on them to bring out that luster and just go with it.